I bought a house without telling my parents, but they tried breaking in with an old copied key while I was away. When that didn't work, they hired a locksmith. He walked out once I showed him proof the home was legally mine. If I had $1 for every time my folks told me, "You'll never make it on your own," I'd be rolling in cash instead of ever needing a mortgage. Shoot, I'd probably be paying off other people's houses just for kicks. My name's Jake, and I grew up in a home where independence wasn't celebrated. It was treated like a silly stage you'd outgrow. Kind of like my old crush on Annie McClure, or that summer I swore I was going to be a magician. My mom, Carol, was the type who slapped expiration dates on every leftover and still checked them religiously every day. Control was her way of showing love. My dad, Mike, specialized in what he liked to call tough love, though it was mostly just the tough part. Anytime I did something right, his knee-jerk reaction was to chalk it up to dumb luck. I wasn't their golden kid. That title belonged to Rachel, my big sister, the universe's favorite child who somehow scored 5 separate just because spa days in a single year. Rachel could plow her car straight into the garage door, and Mom would sigh. "She's just exhausted, poor thing." Meanwhile, I once forgot to vacuum the hallway and got hit with a week of silence and a laminated chore list for my character. So no, I didn't tell them when I bought my first house. Last time I shared good news with them, Dad's first words were, "Are you sure that's smart?" followed by Mom's, "Just promise us you won't do anything impulsive. Like that ugly leather couch you bought." The couch is fine, by the way. Still is. It even reclines. After high school, I went straight into HVAC. College wasn't on the table, not because I couldn't get in, but because I wasn't about to be drowning in debt until 60 learning from someone who never held a socket wrench. Instead, I busted my back working for Franklin Air and Heat. Long shifts, summers where every attic felt like a toaster, and more raccoons than I'll ever admit. But it paid off. I saved every dime. No vacations, no takeout, no overpriced lattes. Just plain old discipline. I rented a dump with peeling linoleum and zero insulation, slowly inching closer to my dream month by month. By the time I hit 26, I had enough for a down payment. It wasn't a mansion, wasn't near the beach. Just a little 2-bedroom ranch on the edge of town with a halfway decent yard, a garage I planned to turn into a workshop, and one feature that meant everything. A front door only I had the key to. And I intended to keep it that way. I didn't tell anyone at first. Not my coworkers, not my friends, and sure as heck not my parents. They still thought I was in the old rental with the crooked mailbox and that weird smell baked into the carpet. I let them think it. Because the truth was, I could finally breathe, not just with my wallet, but with my soul. I painted the walls any color I wanted. Put up floating shelves without someone lecturing me about how screws leave scars. One night, I even danced like an idiot in the empty living room. Just me, a paint roller, and Marvin Gaye coming through a beat-up Bluetooth speaker. I hadn't felt that kind of freedom, well, ever. 3 weeks in, I found my rhythm. Day job, DIY at night. Replacing faucets, fixing a leaky gutter, recaulking windows. I was finally shaping my own space. Then something strange crept in. It started tiny, almost nothing. One Tuesday I came home and noticed the rug by the back door was off, just a hair crooked. I blamed it on my memory, or the wind, or ghosts. Honestly, ghosts seemed like the sanest answer. Then it happened again. The sponge in the kitchen sink was on the wrong side of the faucet. I always put it on the right. Still, I tried to be rational. Maybe I nudged it. Maybe I was worn out. But then came the spoon. A long-handled iced tea spoon sitting in the dish rack. A spoon I didn't even own. I just stared at it like it had insulted me. I don't drink iced tea. It was the spitting image of the set my mom used to brag about, her so-called classy utensils. Like we were nobility, sipping on some veranda. I hadn't seen one of those since the day I moved out. I stood there in my kitchen for what felt like forever, just trying to process it all. That's when the itch started crawling at the back of my brain. Was someone actually coming inside? I went around checking everything. Doors still locked. Windows, nothing cracked or forced. No sign of a break-in anywhere. But my stomach had turned into a pit the size of Indiana. I didn't freak out, though. The next day, I drove to Home Depot, picked up 2 brand-new deadbolts, and swapped out every lock that same night. And still, I didn't tell a soul. Especially not my folks. But the feeling? It wouldn't let up. In fact, it just kept getting stronger. After that spoon showed up, I barely slept. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to talk myself down. Maybe a previous owner had a hidden key. Maybe a neighbor had slipped in. I even found myself at 2 in the morning Googling phantom spoon incidents, like that was a normal thing to do. But deep down, I already knew. I knew exactly who it was. Mom and Dad. Of course it was them. They'd pulled stuff like this before. When I was 22 and moved into my first apartment, Mom just happened to be in the neighborhood every single Sunday for 2 months. Later, I discovered she'd charmed the landlord into giving her a copy of my key, told him she was my emergency contact, sealed the deal with a pie. A pie. When I confronted her about it, she acted like I'd accused her of grand theft auto. I gave birth to you, Jake, she'd said. If I can't walk into my own son's home without permission, what does that say about our relationship? So yeah, finding that spoon? Not a ghost. It was my mother. But this time I wasn't playing. I'd changed the locks. I'd even bought a camera doorbell. This house was my quiet piece of the world, and I wasn't going to let it slip away again. A few days passed without anything weird. I figured maybe the new locks scared them off. Maybe they'd gotten the hint. Then Saturday rolled around. I had a job across town that morning installing a unit for a retired couple. It dragged on because the guy kept offering me lemonade every 20 minutes, and his wife wanted to show me endless pictures of her grandkids in matching Halloween costumes. I smiled and nodded through all of it. But by the time I turned onto my street, I was dead tired. All I wanted was a shower, some takeout, and a dumb Netflix binge. Instead, there they were, parked in my driveway like they owned the place. Dad's silver truck was tilted halfway over the grass, and Mom's minivan, with her Live, Laugh, Love bumper sticker, was blocking the mailbox. I froze. They weren't knocking. They were just standing there, staring at the front door. Dad had his hands on his hips. Mom was furiously tapping at her phone, looking irritated like the house itself had insulted her. I killed the engine and sat there with my heart thudding. For a second, I considered throwing it in reverse, pretending I never saw them, claiming a flat tire. Heck, fleeing to Canada. But instead I took a deep breath and got out. The second my foot hit the pavement, Mom's head whipped toward me like a hawk spotting a mouse. "Jake," she called out, way too brightly. "Oh, there you are. We were just stopping by." Dad gave me a single nod, like I was an employee late to a meeting. I looked at them, then at the house, then back at them. "Stopping by?" I repeated. "You didn't even know I lived here." "Oh," Mom said quickly. "We were just in the area. We drove past and saw your work truck last week. Thought it looked familiar." "Sure, January." I walked toward them slowly, keeping my voice even. "Why are you standing at my door?" "Well," Dad said, clearing his throat, "we thought we'd surprise you. You've been so busy. We wanted to check in. Your mother baked banana bread." I glanced down. Sure enough, she was holding a foil-wrapped loaf like it was a peace treaty. "We figured we'd wait inside," Dad added. "But, your key doesn't seem to be working." I stopped cold. There it was. He said it so casually, like having a key to a house I never gave them access to was completely normal. I just blinked at him. "What key?" I asked. Dad frowned. "The one from your old place. Your mom said it looked like the same model of lock." Mom shrugged, trying to look innocent. "We didn't think it'd hurt to try. Breaking into my house." "Don't be dramatic," she said, rolling her eyes. "It's not like we broke anything." "Not yet," I thought. I exhaled through my nose. The old me would have folded right then and there, opened the door, let them in, pretended it was fine, laughed it off like a good little doormat. But I wasn't that guy anymore. "You need to leave," I said. Mom blinked. "What?" "You heard me. This isn't a social drop-in. You don't have a key. You're not invited. You need to leave." Dad looked at me like I'd just smacked him with the banana bread. "Jake, don't be ridiculous. We're family." "Exactly. And family doesn't sneak into your house when you're not around." "I brought you bread," Mom insisted, as if that fixed everything. "I'll leave it on the porch," I replied evenly. "You can pick it up when you're invited." "Which is not today." They just stared at me, stunned into silence. Then Mom's phone buzzed. She checked it, frowned, and then looked straight at me and said, "We might come back later, when you're calmer." She turned to Dad and whispered something, and then he smirked. They weren't finished, and I knew in that moment that whatever line existed in their minds, they had just erased it. Sunday came and went quietly. Too quietly. I grilled a couple burgers, watched a game, even tried to nap, but there was this constant itch under my skin, like the feeling you get when you know your phone's about to ring. I kept looking out the window, half expecting them to spring out from the bushes. They didn't, but that didn't mean they were done. Monday, I installed a motion sensor camera over the garage and synced it to my phone. I'd already put up a doorbell cam after the spoon incident because, again, this wasn't my first rodeo with them. Now I had full coverage. That evening, mid-shower, my phone buzzed twice on the counter. Motion alert. My stomach tightened. I wrapped a towel around me, dripping across the tiles like some cartoon bird, and grabbed my phone. There they were, both of them, standing in my driveway like it was their timeshare. On the live feed, I watched Mom step out holding something that looked like a casserole dish, while Dad carried a manila envelope under his arm. Didn't we just do this? I muttered. They marched right up to the front door without knocking. Dad pulled out the same key again, tried it, and of course it didn't work. From the tiny speaker I heard Mom say, "Well, if he won't open up, maybe someone else will." Dad muttered something and then pulled out his phone. A few minutes later, a plain white van rolled up. No logo, just pure Locksmith vibes. My jaw dropped. They'd actually called a locksmith. I yanked on clothes faster than I ever have, grabbed my keys, and sped home like it was some low-budget Fast and Furious spin-off called Family Boundaries. Final warning. When I pulled up, the locksmith was already out of the van, clipboard in hand, heading toward my parents. I parked across the street and watched for a second. Mom was laying it on thick with her fake sweet voice. "I'm sure this is all a misunderstanding," she told the guy. "We've just lost access to the home." "Uh-huh," the locksmith muttered, clearly skeptical. Dad handed him the envelope. Probably some half-baked proof of residence or a fake lease they printed off the internet. Wouldn't surprise me one bit. That's when I crossed the street. "Hey," I called out, my voice carrying more than I expected. All heads turned. Mom's face dropped. Dad blinked like I'd teleported. "Funny seeing you here," I said flatly. The locksmith looked between us. "You the homeowner?" I nodded. "Yes, sir. Got ID and the title in my glove box if you need to see it." Dad cleared his throat. "Jake, we were just trying to force your way into my house." Again, I cut him off. "Don't be dramatic," he muttered. "Is that your new motto?" The locksmith stepped back a little, eyeing the key Dad was still holding like it was a smoking gun. Just to be clear, you don't live here?" "No," I said. "They don't. They've never lived here, never paid for a single thing here, weren't invited, weren't given a key, and they're not on any document. But I do have footage of them trying to open the door. Twice." The guy turned to my parents, visibly uncomfortable. "Yeah, I can't help you then." Dad tried to push forward. "You don't understand. This is our son. This is a family matter." The locksmith shrugged. "Yeah, and I'm not getting sued because you two can't respect a boundary." He turned and walked back to his van, and I swear I saw the tiniest smile tug at the corner of his mouth. Mom looked like she'd just bitten into a lemon. "You changed the locks?" she hissed. "You tried to enter without permission?" I shot back. "So yeah, I did." "We were just worried about you," she said, her voice cracking. "You've been distant." "Gee, I wonder why." Dad took a step closer, but I held up a hand. "No more surprise visits. No more spare keys. No more pretending this is normal. If you want to see me, call. Like adults." Mom tried to hand me the casserole dish. I didn't take it. Dad opened his mouth and closed it again. They left without another word. I thought that would be the end of it. I really did. After the locksmith drove off and my parents left with their casserole and bruised egos, I stood in the doorway of my house, for a long time, half waiting for them to turn around, half expecting one last stunt. But they didn't. They actually left. And for the first time in weeks, it was quiet again. I should have known better. Because the next morning, the text messages started. First from Mom. "We were only trying to help. Sorry if it came off aggressive. Can we talk?" Then another 2 hours later. "I just want to see you more often. I feel like I don't even know you anymore. Please don't freeze us out." Then a photo of the banana bread, just sitting on their kitchen counter like it was under house arrest. By noon, Dad chimed in with his usual subtlety. "You didn't need to embarrass us like that. That locksmith guy was just doing his job. No need to turn everything into a show." No apology. Just a passive-aggressive jab wrapped in a sentence. Classic. I didn't reply. Not to any of it. I left the messages on read. Because what was I supposed to say? Sorry for protecting my property and not rolling out the red carpet for your unauthorized entry attempt? Nah. I went to work that afternoon like usual, fixed a busted heat pump in somebody's crawl space, and tried not to think about my phone vibrating every half hour. When I got home that night, something felt off. Not in a someone broken way, but in a someone's about to way. And I was right, because sitting on my front porch bench was a takeout bag from that cafe Mom always loved. Inside was a slice of lemon cake and a handwritten note on pink stationery. Thought you'd like this. You used to love lemon cake. We miss you, Mom. I stood there in the doorway, bag in hand, like I'd just found a dead fish wrapped in a love letter. It was textbook emotional sabotage. No actual apology, no acknowledgement of the boundary they'd crossed. Just sugar, nostalgia, and guilt. And then, 2 days later, right as I thought the weird peace might hold, Rachel showed up. Of course she did. She was the golden child, the favorite, the designated family diplomat. Every family has one. The one who never gets their hands dirty but always swoops in to smooth things over while conveniently staying on the pedestal. I was in the middle of unclogging a sink in the garage when I heard a soft knock. Not the firm, obnoxious parent knock. No, this one was delicate, soft, apology-coded. I opened the door, and there she was. Mandy Barker. Perfect hair, perfect coat, and that polished smile she'd been practicing since grade school. The one that managed to look sympathetic and superior at the same time. Jake, she said, like she was announcing a weather report. Mandy, I answered, wiping my hands on my jeans. I was just in the neighborhood, she added. Nobody is ever just in the neighborhood out here. She gave a small, practiced laugh. Then came the pause, the beat she always let hang in the air before her big reveal. She lifted a small wooden box. Mom asked me to drop this off. She said it's yours. I took it from her. It was a key holder I'd made back in high school shop class, the kind of thing Dad once kept in the hallway. I'd forgotten it even existed. She said it belongs in your house now, Mandy added. I stared at it for a long second before looking back at her. You could have mailed it. She wanted it to be more personal, right? Just like making copies of my key was personal. A flicker crossed her face, the tiniest flash of guilt. They didn't mean harm, she said quietly. They just don't know how to let go. I leaned against the frame of the door. And that's supposed to be my problem? No, she admitted. But maybe if you invited them over once, they wouldn't feel like they have to push their way in. I laughed. I couldn't stop myself. Mandy, you don't invite burglars to dinner just because they keep showing up. She winced. Okay, maybe not the best metaphor. No, it's perfect. Because that's what this is. They want control, not connection. She went silent, then finally said, You've changed. Exactly, I replied, and for the first time in a while I smiled for real. That's the whole point. I kept the key holder she brought, but only long enough to drop it into the trash can after snapping a picture. Not because it mattered, but because it looked better there. That was the piece my parents never understood. They thought I moved out to make a statement, to pick a fight. What they never grasped was that I left so I could finally breathe without someone hovering over my shoulder, grading every choice. After Mandy left, things went quiet for a stretch. No more surprise visits. No more guilt cakes wrapped in tinfoil. No more half-hearted gestures pretending to be reconciliation. I even started to relax again, to enjoy the place. Bought a new rug for the living room, upgraded my drill set, built a shelf in the garage just for snacks and sodas. Real adulthood. Then one Thursday afternoon, I got a notification from Facebook. Mom tagged me in a post. I clicked. Big mistake. It was a collage of old photos. Me as a kid holding a wrench next to Dad, me covered in paint beside Mom, my high school graduation, a grainy shot from my HVAC certification. And under it, a caption, proud of the man our son has become. He bought a beautiful home with hard work and determination. We were blessed to be part of the journey. I stared at the screen. Blessed to be part of the journey? They hadn't even known about the house until they tracked down my truck and tried to jimmy a key. But here they were, presenting themselves as co-authors of my life story, tying themselves to my accomplishments with a bow and a caption. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I opened Instagram and snapped a picture of my front door. Wrote underneath, bought my first house on my own. No co-signers. No financial help. No surprise visits. Just me, a drill, and a lot of patience. Finally something that's mine alone. I didn't tag anyone. Didn't drop names. I didn't have to. Within 10 minutes, the family group chat lit up. Mandy, really? Mom, you could have just talked to us. Dad, that was petty, Jake. Cheryl, I'm staying out of this. Cousin Eli liked the post. Then Mom again. After everything we've done for you. Everything they'd done? Like teaching me that success came with strings attached? Like making me feel guilty for standing on my own 2 feet? I put the phone down and let the messages pile up. For once, silence was my answer. Mandy was quiet on the other end of the line, and I could practically hear her brain trying to find the right angle. You used to be kind, she said at last, her voice low. What happened to the boy who made us breakfast on Mother's Day? I didn't even hesitate. That boy grew up and got a mortgage, Mandy. There was a long silence. By Saturday, she tried again. Texted me. Can we meet for coffee? Just to talk. I said no. She asked why. I told her the truth. Because I've said everything I need to say. The problem isn't that I don't communicate. It's that none of you listen. She left me on read. 2 hours later, Mom texted, You've made your point. We won't bother you again. And for a minute, I almost believed her. Until Monday, when my neighbor across the street sent me a message. Hey, just making sure everything's okay. Your folks were here again today. Parked in your driveway. Tried to look through the window. Looked upset. Of course they did. Because when they said they wouldn't bother me again, what they really meant was, until we think of a new strategy. I opened my phone, pulled up the security app, downloaded the clearest clip of them standing outside my house, and made a decision. I wasn't going to argue anymore. I wasn't going to write another text that turned into a debate. I was going to make it official. Turns out, when your parents act like unwanted guests on your property, there's a word for that: trespassing. I wasn't trying to be theatrical. I didn't want to become a viral story or end up on Judge Judy while my mother wept about lemon cake and lost connections. But I also wasn't going to wait until I came home and found them in my kitchen rearranging the silverware again. So the next morning, I took a personal day, went downtown, and walked into a law office that looked like it charged $1,000 just to breathe the air. The receptionist had cheekbones sharp enough to file a cease and desist on their own. When I met with the attorney, M.S. Dwyer, I laid everything out: the copied key, the attempted entry, the locksmith, the porch drop-offs, the uninvited window peeking, the casseroles. All of it. She didn't blink once. Do you have proof? She asked. I pulled out my phone and showed her the security footage, my parents trying the key, their exchange with the locksmith, the latest clip of them craning at my windows like bargain bin ghosts. She smiled politely, in that calm, lethal lawyer way, and said, We can absolutely make this stop. 2 days later, I had a formal no trespass order in my hands. Not a restraining order, nothing flashy, just a quiet, legal, get off my property and don't come back unless I say so document. One for each parent, signed and notarized. I had copies mailed, but more importantly, I taped one to the inside of my front window right above the smile, "You're on camera" sticker. Petty? Maybe. Necessary? Absolutely. 3 days passed. No knock. No lemon cake. No casseroles. Just blessed, eerie silence. Until the voicemail. I recognized the number. Dad's. I'd ignored the previous dozen missed calls, but this one came with a transcribed preview. You're not serious, are you? I played it. Jake, your mother's upset. We just can't believe you'd go this far. A legal order? For your own parents? What does that say about the way you were raised? What happened to respect? What happened to family? You can't erase us, son. We're not some bad habit you can cut off. This is real life. Blood is blood. The classic speech. Blood is thicker than boundaries. I saved the voicemail. Didn't respond. But I did forward it to Ms. Dwyer just to have it on file. Then my phone rang again. This time it was Mandy. Not a text. Not a voice note. An actual call, which she only does if someone's dead or she wants to borrow my truck. I let it ring. Then curiosity won, and I picked up. Jake, she said. No hello. No how are you. Just my name like it was a warning. You lawyered up? Yep. You served Mom and Dad a trespass order? Yep. You taped it to the window? Also yep. I heard her exhale through her nose. You know they're devastated. I bet they are. They feel like you don't love them anymore. They've confused being loved with being allowed to do whatever they want. Big difference. There was a long pause before Mandy finally spoke. Dad's been talking about rewriting the will. I didn't miss a beat. Let me guess, cutting me out. The silence on her end told me everything. I actually smiled. Well, good thing I bought my house with my own money then, huh? You really don't care? She asked carefully. I thought about it for a second and realized something I never expected. I didn't. Not even a little. You know what I care about? I said. Being able to spend a weekend without someone staring through my windows holding baked goods like a bribe. That's what matters to me. She sighed, softer this time. Jake, you've changed. That's the idea, I told her. 3 weeks had passed since I taped the no trespass order to my window, and the quiet that followed was better than I imagined. Not the heavy, tense kind of quiet, but the kind that feels like breathing room, like finally taking off a too-tight shirt. My weekends were mine again. No guilt texts, no drive-by visits, no lemon cake sitting on the porch like bait. Just me, my tools, and whatever trashy TV I decided to binge. Even the family chat went dark. Mom stopped with the sentimental photo dumps. Dad stopped leaving those stiff voicemails, and Mandy, to her credit, kept her distance. I started to believe it might actually be over. Then came the call. Random Tuesday afternoon, I was sitting in my truck between service jobs, halfway through a gas station turkey sandwich, when my phone lit up with an unfamiliar number. I answered. Hello, is this Mr. Jake Barker? Yeah, I said. This is Craig from Hope and Home Realty. Just confirming the listing at 230 Hickory Lane. I blinked. That was my address. I didn't list anything. Craig hesitated, then cleared his throat. According to my notes, someone identifying as the homeowner contacted us to start the valuation. They mentioned the house might be going on the market. My stomach dropped. Whose name did they give you? Edward Barker. My father. I actually laughed, sharp and loud, startling myself. Craig went quiet. Sorry, that's not happening, I said. My dad doesn't live here. Never has. I bought this place myself. Deed, mortgage, keys, all in my name. He has zero authority. Understood, Craig replied, cautious now. I'll close the file. Thank you for clarifying. No problem, I said. And if he tries again, I've got plenty of security footage to back me up. Craig gave a nervous chuckle. Got it. I hung up and just sat there, staring at my dashboard. It hit me that this wasn't about the house at all. It was about control. They'd failed at breaking in, failed at guilt-tripping me, failed at sneaking around the edges. So now they were trying to wedge themselves into the paperwork. Rewrite the story of ownership so they could still claim a piece of it. Not happening. I went home, opened my laptop, and typed a letter. Nothing dramatic, just firm. Any attempt to impersonate ownership, interfere with the property, or involve third parties without my consent would result in legal action. I sent it to my parents and CC'd Mandy for good measure. 2 hours later, Dad called. I let it go to voicemail. His message was short, one sentence. I don't even recognize you anymore. I listened, then deleted it. Good, I muttered. A week later, I threw a barbecue. Friends only. We sat on lawn chairs, ate ribs off paper plates, and laughed so hard the neighbors peeked over the fence. As the sun dipped low, someone asked, So, do your folks ever come around? I pointed toward the window where the no trespass order still hung in perfect view beneath a cheap welcome sign I'd bought as a joke. Not since they tried to sell the place out from under me. Everyone laughed, and for the first time in a long while, I felt completely at ease. This house, this quiet, this life, it was mine. Every single inch of it.